All right, I'd like to go ahead and call this regular city council meeting to order on Monday, April 14th, 6 p.m. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Ludwig.
Present.
Haynes. Jenkins.
Here.
Van Allsburg.
Here.
Rhines.
Here.
Gilroy.
Here.
Hanson.
Yes.
I would entertain a motion to excuse Councilman Haynes. He did make me aware that he would not be here this evening.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have support? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for approval of this evening's agenda as is submitted unless there are changes that need to be made.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you so much. Do I have support?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have an opportunity for audience participation with a maximum of 5 minutes per presentation if there's anybody in the gallery. I see none, so we'll move forward. Council meeting minutes of March 24th, 2025. I'm looking for approval unless there are changes to be noted.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 24, 2025 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have support?
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Terry, you had an opportunity to review accounts payable for this evening.
I did. I had two questions. John answered both of them.
Perfect.
The remarkable things in this accounts payable thing, two things. One, we had 0 transfers to other governmental units. Therefore, our whole budget was only $82,000.
All right.
And we're pretty trim and shipping our dollars out to other organizations. And the other is, as you're driving out on Rowley Road out there, I'd like you to just take a moment and appreciate the stripes on the road, you know, on the side of the road, in the middle of the road, because those are $1,000 a mile.
Okay, all right.
Okay? Those are really good stripes.
We always learn something new during budget, during accounts payable.
Yes.
Yes.
Terry, since you do the review, you said you had a couple of questions. Would you be willing to share what those questions were in responses?
Yeah, no
Since you're
problem.
doing a,
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely.
Here's, the first one was for police department equipment and cloud. It's on 328, it's number 78266 if you want to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's PD equipment and cloud, it's $7,043. And my question was, is this an annual thing, or is this a monthly thing that we have to redo? Because if it's $7,000 a month, that's kind of a lot.
Right.
And John's response was, this is an annual thing.
Yes.
There are some things in here, there's another one that was like that, but I didn't have a question about it. It was Ingham County Health Department, where they contract with us to do 3 samples a month on the Red Cedar River, and they charge us $20 a sample, and they charge us ahead of time for the entire summer, or the entire 6 months or something like that. So that's another example of something that is an annual thing that comes in on once a year there. So that was one. The other one was the city attorney and retainer services. No criticism of Tim, but I wonder if we need to have the city attorney present at city council meetings. You occasionally have something good to say, but most meetings there's not. It doesn't seem like it's. I wonder if we need to pay the money to have you here for each one.
Okay.
Maybe we could plan ahead of time for which ones to have you here and which ones not, and so forth, or something like that.
Okay. Good questions, asked and answered, I'm sure.
Yes,
All right. So, do you have your motion ready?
I do.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I move to approve checks 78,249 to 78,278, and ACH 1447 to ACH 1487, and EFT 1488, for a grand total of $82,121.28.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry, for all the information. Thank you for the support. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Van Allsburg.
Yeah.
Rhines.
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Ludwig.
yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to our action items, and thank you so much for preparing the agenda with who is responsible for each action item behind it, because sometimes that's always I always turn it over to the city manager, but it looks like we have 3 action items. The first is gonna be technology purchases, and I'm gonna turn this over to our, city treasurer, Tom Mead.
Thank you, and good evening. Included in your packet is a letter we received, which we knew was coming, but from our IT provider, VC3, reminding us that our current Windows, version of Windows is going to be no longer supported, starting in October of this year, so we've, in communications with them, been making plans to see what was needed to get our software, or our hardware upgraded to where it could handle newer versions of Windows, and after analyzing all our computers within the city, they've come up with a list of trying to do some upgrades on some of the computers that were not as old. Maybe they had some problems and had to get replaced, not too long ago, so they have the capacity to be upgraded. But unfortunately, the majority of the city's computers are rather old. It's been a while since most of them were replaced, and they just don't have the capacity to upgrade to the newer version of Windows. Therefore, they provided us quotes, which also are provided in your packet. So what we're asking for tonight is the approval of the 3 quotes listed, totaling $39,371. Now, what we have also run into, may or may not be tariff related, I don't know for sure, but that's kind of what we're hearing. In putting this together, we've already had to change this twice because of, we get the quote, and a week later we get an update saying, hey, we can't honor these prices anymore because the technology's already jumped. So they would give us a new quote, and then of course it changed again. So what we're asking for, to avoid from when we last talked to them, which is right before we put this packet together, just in case there's a technology increase again, we put in a 10% or a not to exceed clause of 10% above what the quotes are. That amount is the $43,230.78. And then along with this approval, we would like to have a budget amendment, again, with the technology jumping. We had budgeted $30,000 a year ago with the anticipation of this coming. Unfortunately, technology's gone up a little bit since then, so we're asking for another $13,500 in the budget line. So our total budget in that line would be the $43,500, but again, it's only a $13,500 increase in the budget amendment.
All right, Tom, with these upgrades and with the new equipment, what do we expect the life expectancy of the equipment? And then when would we would be due for software upgrades?
I think the 2-part question there with, I think computers, some of these are going on 4 to 5 years old, so hopefully, we could expect that again. Software, that's a little trickier because Microsoft will, it's kind of all in their court when they decide how long they're going to support a particular version. So.
Right, so with these quotes that you have, what is the support package that comes with it for that software?
Just like, I don't know if I clarified, it's Microsoft that's, we have version 10, so that's the particular software that's going to be no longer supported.
Right.
So in replacing it, Microsoft basically, just like anybody's computers, anytime there's updates or if they find I can't remember what they call it.
Patch.
Patches and all that kind of stuff. They'll roll them out regularly, so, and there's no fee for that. The only thing that, probably will, we may see some changes on with Microsoft. They've kind of gone away where you used to be able to buy the big bulk license, or a license to cover several versions, or you could kind of buy a bulk license for like Excel and Word and all that, and they've kind of gone away from that, where now they're trying to charge us, for each machine.
Right.
And we're already paying some of that from the machines that have been replaced in the last few years, and I'm sure this will probably increase a little bit because of that, but
My last question would be then, once we get this new equipment in, will we be assessing the remainder of the equipment to see what the life expectancy of that is? And do we anticipate needing to replace that other equipment?
good question.
In the future.
I forgot to mention, this actually, like I said, there were a few machines that had some problems, and Holly will be a good example. Theirs died last year, right during election year, and had to get a replacement. So there were a few machines that are only like a year old or so that will be upgraded, but most of these, we looked at them all, and we said, based on the age and because of the capacity and the questionability about whether they could handle the new upgrade, we said, let's just do them all. So
Okay.
this basically will
Replaces
be
everything?
all DPW, all the police department, including their in-car,
Okay,
laptops and city hall ones. The servers, I'm not, they've been monitoring them, telling us we're good on the servers now, and I know, police department just got a new server last fall. So yeah, I think we're gonna be in pretty good shape. Now, except one exception, there is, at the wastewater plant and, water plant, there is a separate computer they have to run their SCADA systems.
right, and
And
that's
that comes
system
through-
specific,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely, and because of that, it comes to a different vendor. Steve out there has been working with that vendor, getting the quote on them, so we will probably come back to you with quotes on those, or, the approval on those. I think, I'm trying to remember, seems like it's around 11,000 for each building, just ballpark, but don't hold me to it, because again, the prices keep increasing, so.
That's fine, that's fine. Terry, question?
This is kind of the seat of the pants thing. How long do you think Windows 10 lasted? Was it good for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years? This is the kind of thing that most of us should have some feel for, because we all use Windows 10.
Yeah, and I
Something like
wish, I wish I were a little bit more in tune with the techie world. And I used to try to be that way, but it seems like it started changing so fast all the
Yeah.
time that I just
So how
kind of,
about this guy? Is this guy gonna work?
I believe that will be good for a while, because these are not too old.
Yeah.
And these are not hooked to the internet. The
Right.
big thing with Windows, when they are no longer supported, is if the hackers find a weakness there somewhere, when you're on the internet and stuff, they can get into it, but, these not being online and stuff, there's not near the risk with these, so.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna move over to city manager.
Yeah, thank you. I was just pointing out, we have this technology in front of us, and these serve us really well, but
Yeah.
these are,
These are
the
plug-in.
software actually costs more than the actual device does these
Yeah.
days. I mean, these are pretty simple and they're pretty basic, and they're not connected to our server. I mean, you could connect to the internet as a guest, through that way, but just like anybody could through their phone or for a tablet if they brought it into, to the council chamber here. So, technology, 3 years is probably a good lifespan for things these days. You're probably getting into the lucky and anything more than 3 years. But I think Windows 10, I have a laptop at home, that's my personal laptop that I've had for a long time, and it's Windows 10. I don't even remember how long it's been on there.
Sure.
And it still works for the most part, but I watch Kalamazoo football highlights on there. I don't do, City of Williamston work there, so a lot different. So.
All right, well, I appreciate the quotes being so thorough. Does anyone else have any questions for Tom? Yes, Steve?
Oh, VC3 is who we have spent a lot of money on, and just recently, again,
Yes.
this sounds like this equipment is for computers and for software,
Correct.
which means, my way of thinking, anyone can provide us with that. Is there a reason that we didn't have other quotes?
Yes, I should have mentioned, we actually did reach out, some of the hardware that usually is the most expensive are the police department laptops or tough books, they're called, that go in their cars, and Bonnie actually did reach out to CDW, who can work with my deal, and surprisingly, VC3s were actually lower than those on, the quotes we got from CDW that was through my deal. I don't know why, but it was, we were shocked, so we went with them. And it also, cause I mean, we talked to VC3 about that, and they said, if you can find them cheaper, that's great, we'll still install them and not have any issues, but honestly, we didn't find any that were cheaper, so.
Okay,
So
city
just
manager?
recap, I mean, we belong to MyDale, which is the state purchasing cooperative.
Yep.
And for some things, it works great, like vehicles, police vehicles, DPW vehicles, salt, it's part of the cooperative, but for technology, I think in this case, because VC3 is such a large consumer or purchaser of equipment, hardware, they probably somehow get a better rate direct through CDW, right?
Mhm.
Is the name of the,
I'm not sure where they.
you don't have to go into great detail, just
I don't know
CDW
where
is what we use,
they're,
right?
I don't know where VC3's
Okay,
getting.
yeah.
And that's a very good question, because
Yes,
I know,
yes,
I have worked in higher education for a very long time. There are some times where we have to provide bids from multiple vendors, but there are also some times where we, go single source, sole provider, and have to give an explanation of why we went single source, sole provider, so I appreciate that question, because, you know, if we're not doing our due diligence by, you know, shopping, and getting the best deal for our dollars, then, you know, that is a good question, so thank you.
And then just a comment about the tariffs. It just concerns me that, this is negative, but anybody and everybody that wants to raise the prices right now are gonna say, oh, the tariffs. I don't know if there's any way that we can
You're right.
verify that,
Mhm.
but just, I guess a comment that everyone leaning on tariffs
Sure.
causes me a concern.
Yeah, I guess I would just maybe, outside of this particular deal that we have in front of us, but going forward, I'd ask for a quote, you know, at least good for 30 to 45 days. I mean, you know, for somebody to have to make a overnight decision because prices are gonna go up, I mean, that's a little, you know, concerning.
Sure.
But I agree with Steve that, you know, for them to, oh, decide now or else, you know, we've got to raise it in 4 days. But I appreciate all the work that you put into this town. If there's, yes,
For what
Terry?
it's worth, the VC3 thing, the contract and so forth, when I start thinking that we're paying them a lot of money and maybe we're not getting what we should, I start thinking about the cost of having an IT specialist on staff with the city government. And I compare the two of those, and I think VC3 is, it's expensive, but, and if you had an IT guy on staff and he had a way to upgrade your hardware, and he did it a lot, so he's familiar with the hardware and so forth, and could probably get a good price. If he was here and we were talking to him, we'd probably just say, how many down, go for it. So,
All right, yes,
Yeah,
Scott?
I got a very strong intuition when I read the communication from VC3 that we're in good hands. He came over and me like, yeah, we're in good hands, so I'm
Yeah.
passing that on.
Well, thank you. I'm looking for the motion set before us.
move to approve the 3 quotes provided for a total cost of $39,300.71 with a not to exceed cost of $43,230.78, along with a $13,500 budget amendment increase to account 101-901-970.01.
Thank you, Terry, I appreciate that. Do I have support?
Support.
Second.
Thank you both. If there's no further discussion, Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Ludwig,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes,
Van Allsburg.
yes,
All right, and again, Tom, thank you so much for the thorough packet, I appreciate that.
Absolutely, you're very welcome.
Our next action item is City Assessment Services Agreement Extension, and this is gonna go over to our city manager, John Hannafin.
Thank you. So, as the memo says, we did advertise for assessing services last year. We had the same assessor for a number of years. We received 7 bids, and this council did select, with staff's recommendation, HSC Services for a 1-year contract. In their 1 year, show us that you're a good company and can do a good job company. They did exceptional. Our residential and commercial feedback has been very positive. They've been very responsive for the handful of times that our staff's had to directly reach out to them for this or that. They are asking for a 4% fee increase for the coming year, which is, in my opinion, is certainly fair based on inflation and the work that they did. We did budget, I'm not gonna say the number out loud, but we did budget quite a bit more than the 31,200, just based on what we thought the market would be after even going through a competitive bid process. So their extension letter is in there. As I said, they've done a great job, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, any questions, Ms. Terry?
How many property assessments does this buy us?
How many property assessments?
So that's their assessing services, right?
Right, so it covers the entire
Yeah, it's the
city
entire
of
city, so
Williamston,
it's
residential and business properties.
1,850 parcels,
Mhm.
give or take,
So will they do 30 assessments in the next month, or 3 assessments, or?
So,
I'm not
I'll
looking
do
for
the best
exact-
I can to be, concise as I can based on the
Yeah,
breadth of the
okay.
question. Because assessing it's something that's done on an annualized basis. They don't necessarily go through and review every parcel. But there are comparables that are done that are applied to different use codes, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, vacant, et cetera, et cetera. It's based on trends in town and immediately adjacent to town, and so there's an assessment factor that's applied, and that's how your assessment is calculated.
But how many, so we pay them this many dollars a month, and do they do 10 properties, or do they assess 30 properties?
Tom's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
My understanding is they are shooting to try to do 20% of the properties each year.
20%, did you?
So, by the end of 5, by rotating around, trying to do 20%, so within a 5-year period, they've covered every property in that. And then
That's
they'll
the number
start
we're
over.
looking for, thank you.
And it's fairly common. I mean, every so often you are, by the state, you're required to do an audit. And that's not a bad thing, you're just randomly selected. That has happened a couple times in other communities I've worked in, and then you're required to basically go through, and I think it's called remonumentation, isn't that the term of it?
Yeah, it comes with-
For completely reassessing everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
So
Scott?
I'm more inclined to want to hire an assessor as opposed to the service, so I asked Google. I said, Google, what's it better to do for a municipality, and you know what it said? It said hire a service.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there you go.
And a lot of it's based on the volume and the size. I mean, we have board review a couple times a year, and they reside over that process. And it's one of the, sort of the separation of church and state thing, because you're the ones that ultimately approve the millage rate. We're the staff that ultimately, manages the finances of that rate, but they're the ones that, go through and review what the properties are actually valued at, so. And they have done a great job, not taking anything away from the last assessor that we had,
Sure.
but they've done a fantastic job for us.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the explanation, I appreciate it. Terry, thank you for your thoughtful question. With that being said, if there's no other discussion, we have a motion, and I'm looking for that motion.
I'll make a motion to select HSC Services, Inc. for assessing services for the following terms and conditions. 1, the period of June 1st, 2025 to May 31st, 2026. 2, for the monthly fee of $2,600 for a total not to exceed $31,200. 3, the option to extend the term if mutually agreed upon by both parties.
Thank you so much. Do I have support?
Support.
Thank you both. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Gilroy,
Yes.
Ludwig,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes?
Van Allsburg,
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
All right. Our last action item is the ESTA personal leave policy. That is the Michigan's Earned Sick Time Act. We have a memo in our packet. I'm going to turn this over to our city manager, John Hannafin.
Thank you, and I'm gonna lead off with the lame duck session of 2024. This was one of their last pieces of legislation that was moved its way through the government. And so here it is, another unfunded state mandate for us as a local government. The good news is that many of these things were already part of our normal benefits package, whether through non-union or the 2 unions that we have. The biggest impact for us is adding part-time employees as part of the Earned Sick Time Act. And I'm not gonna read all this chapter and verse, but this is the summary, and the policy is it's an amalgam of, different legal reviews of the act and, you know, our different trade associations, the treasurers and the clerks association and the city managers association on a policy that complies with the act. So the policy is here. I know Mr. Mead, you know, was pretty involved in this as well. Again, I'd be happy to explain it to you, but essentially employees can earn up to 72 hours of paid sick time per year, and there's a qualifier for the number of employees that your organization has, and then there's some rules on how they can take it and you know, what the documentation is, et cetera, et cetera. So
Okay.
we've already been complying with the act because it is state law now, but
Correct.
this is the policy that codifies it and then puts it in place for our personnel manual moving forward.
All right. Seems pretty cut and dry, since it is mandated by the state of Michigan. So does anybody have any questions, or would somebody like to offer up the motion before us?
I'd move that we adopt the policy for sick leave as amended and required by state law and as presented by the city manager.
All right, thank you. Do I have support?
Second.
Thank you, Bull. There's no other questions or discussion on it. Holly, will you call the roll?
Ludwig,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Van Allsburg,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes. All right, that concludes our action items. Moving along to our discussion items. We have several, with the first being the presentation of the 2025-2026 fiscal year budget. And I'm going to turn that over to City Manager John Hannafin and our City Treasurer Tom Mead.
Thank you. So as by charter, staff is obligated to present a budget to City Council at the first meeting in April, so here we are in your packet. And if anybody does want a hard copy, do let us know and we'll make sure we'll get one to you. If you want to save the ink and the paper at home, we can happily provide that for you. But this is our proposed budget for 25-26 fiscal year. As you know, as part of our budget process, we will have work sessions, plural, coming in the coming months. We are going to have our first one in 2 weeks. We'll have that as part of the regular council meeting, and then the second one will be at the next meeting in May. All the while marching towards our public hearings later in May, and then the adoption of the budget, millage rates, utility rates, et cetera, at the first meeting in June. And the reason, you know, typically, you know, just the way the calendar works, because of I think it's important that we adopt a budget on a regular council meeting night. Not that there's something strange or odd about, you know, moving our meeting to Tuesday. But folks are just used to seeing us on a Monday, so we would adopt the budget ultimately on June 4th. I think it's June 14th or 12th. I'm not sure when the first meeting is in June. So just to cover some of the highlights, some of the things that we are proposing to include, and this is consistent with things we talked about at the visioning session. We did prepare the budget with the idea of doing High Street from North Putnam to Cedar. There are a couple of vehicles, one for PD, one for Public Works, and then we are proposing to purchase the back truck this year. We did, by continuing to look at our staffing and our wage allocation, we're confident we're going to be able to forestall a rate increase for water and wastewater again. And when we go through the work sessions, we'll cover that more in detail. So that's good news for those. And beyond that, it's essentially a status quo budget. I mean, there's other things that the DDA and TIFA TIFA in particular will be looking at doing some larger capital projects that they've been you know, saving money for, and we'll discuss those as part of the work session. And we did mention those. We shared that list at the visioning session in February. So with that, Tom, if you just want to cover, I don't know, any of the trends on as far as like revenue or anything from the state, if you want to take a few seconds on that, that would be awesome.
Sure, if you'd like. There are a couple graphs or charts there that really, not to get too hung up on them, but basically I just want to point out on the revenue one, you know, you can see that we're fortunate that our property tax or our taxable values continue to increase, because that's kind of what's really making it making Williamston financially strong. Because when you look at the center three charts there, the state revenue sharing, we're not getting any help from the state. They've stayed pretty consistent. I mean, the increments are very, very small on what they increase each year. So same with everything else, that, you know, our fees and charges, you know, we haven't raised them, so really it's property taxes that are helping us, stay financially sound. And on the next chart, I just kinda wanna point out, big, you know, overview from way up above, but when you look at, cause obviously no detail here, but just looking at total expenditures, 23-24 obviously was a little bit skewed because we did have an extra $640,000 in there that went towards the Putnam Street. But in general, the revenues, the blue boxes, the expenses and the blue boxes, we're trying to keep them pretty steady as we can. You know, we're not doing a lot of crazy spending, and yet while we're putting these budgets together, our fund balance is increasing some each year, and that's kind of what I'm trying to show, you know, that we're trying to operate best we can with the you know, the revenues we have to keep our expenses status quo best we can, and continue to grow fund balance and keep it healthy.
Excellent. So in 2 weeks, we'll dive right in and get into this a little deeper and bring all your questions. And don't hesitate to reach out if you want a paper copy of this, and staff will get that to you. Thank you. Construction project updates.
I think just to quickly go through some of the things that have happened, we did replace the hydrant right out here at the corner of Cedar and High Street for that services the area over there. That project was done last week. We are putting together a list of patch projects for paving, both in major and local streets. We should have that for your review and approval at the next council meeting on April 28th, and that's for the current budget year that we're in. There are some things like, you know, one of the, I guess, easier ones, if you really want to see it, is just head east on High Street. There's a patch that's going to get done there. That was part of a, you don't like to say it out loud, but a utility issue. And there's a handful of those in town. But beyond that, there's a number of areas in town that we've slated to do some patch paving. So there's that going on. We are in conjunction with Spicer. We did apply for some funding assistance. It wouldn't be until 2028, but it's to do work on the North Putnam Bridge. And it's essentially it's a lot of maintenance things. You know, it's not a rebuild or anything like that, but bridges get wear, and you need to put some work into it from time to time. So those bridges that we do have, the Wallace Street Bridge and North Putnam, are reviewed every other year. And they're reviewed on opposite years. We did the Wallace Street Bridge inspection this year, and next year we'll do North Putnam. But the hope is to secure some state funding in 2028 to help pay for that. Now, Phil, is it the Critical Bridge Fund? What's the, you know, you don't have to look it up, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's a special, I mean, you know, we have, North Putnam obviously is a very, very important bridge to us, and, you know, the funding's not available that often, but we figured it was worth shooting for it, and hopefully we'll secure that. So, and as I mentioned when we were talking about budget, we are planning to do High Street with budget approval, and also part of that would be chip seal on Mullet Street.
Okay.
That's it for construction.
All right, master plan update?
So we did have we had 3 site plans at the last planning commission meeting, which was great. A lot of discussion there. We talked a little bit about the master plan and the goals and objectives. We do not have any site plans at the May meeting, so we plan on making some great headway on the master plan as far as you know, starting to craft the document more and craft the language. I'm meeting with our consultants McKenna this week to help put that together, so still making good progress on that.
All right, and main force safety improvements.
I don't have anything to add. I don't know if Phil does either, so.
Nothing.
One thing I guess I do have, I was invited to, still not quite sure what the meeting was, because there was like 95 MDOT people and me, but I was happy to be there. And it was regarding the signal at our intersection. And it was the kickoff meeting, and it was good. In the end, it ended up being, I think, productive, but there were other signals in the county, and I think partly the timing of the meeting was during most people's spring break, and you know, I don't celebrate spring because I'm a winter guy, so I was around to, you know, be involved in the Zoom call, but it was good. It was the final design the MDOT still looks at this as a 2026 project, and so I think it's by October, the final design has to be in. And that's just for, you know, what the signal looks like. It doesn't necessarily mean whether there's a turn signal or not, but really the big, I guess the big reveal is whether we have what we currently have now, which is the suspended signal on wires, or going to a mast arm.
Yeah.
Mast arms are preferable for a lot of reasons. I mean, aesthetic is one of them. The other thing about having a mast arm, and they talked about that in the meeting, is they would be able to add a turn signal if there is a turn lane in the near future. So overall, it was positive, and there's more meetings to come on that.
All right, yes, Steve.
So where are we at with the conversation we had, trying to do something at the four corners? I know the light is a big part of that, but we had talked about striping and
Yeah.
different coating and
Yeah,
so forth.
so what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the design, and then we're gonna submit it to MDOT for a permit, and hopefully approve it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a meeting next week with my staff who's been working on it. We're still trying to figure out the two ends and how those go from 4 lanes to 3 that MDOT will approve, so that's the one bugaboo. Everything else fits pretty well. So once we get that done, we're just gonna apply for a permit and
And do our own
Make-
painting,
and
get some cans and brushes.
exactly, pretty much.
All right,
So the whole thing with the road diet, that's just gone? That's just
yes,
good.
yes, until it's brought back to our attention. Yes, Dan?
So, you mentioned 2026 project for the light, but plans need to be in by October-ish, is that? But if I'm remembering correctly, when we discussed this previously, in order to get a turn light in that, we still have to address something with South Putnam, right, to make the room
Correct.
for the
Yeah.
turn lane there?
Yeah.
Is there a time frame we have to deal with on that? Or if we get the mast arm, we can do that later?
Yeah, that's really how, you know, all the pins have to line up for us to get ultimately what we want there. The mast arm can be built, and even the extension with the signal, if we decided to add a turn lane, or MDOT did, we would have to wait for them to upgrade that signal again. If they do the mast arm, then it reaches out far enough, and then to add the turn signal box, it'd be a separate box on there, they could add that. But they just need, the final design of October for them for the mast arm, just so they can bid the project out. And what they would do is they would bid it with those, like the either or option, with the signal extension or not. And that's why, working with Spicer and through Phil to get the permit in for what we wanna see there, and then if it's approved, it'd be approved.
Gotcha.
And there are other things, I mean, there are upgrades that you can get to the mast arm, and like there's lighted boxes and things like that, but they're not, you know, millions of dollars. There's some cost to that, but, you know, we have until probably the next budget to make that decision. But if for some reason we had to make, you know, a $50,000 decision to upgrade the signal to what we want, then we certainly have funds that we would transfer to do that.
Yep, great question, thank you. All right, that concludes our discussion items. On our agenda, correspondence received information. We do not have any, so I'll move right along to our department head reports and go back over to our city manager, John Hannafin.
I don't have a lot to add. We do have a DDA meeting tomorrow night, and we will not have a Parks meeting this week, but we will have a TIFA meeting next week, so lots of things happening.
All right, great. Chief, hello, how
Well,
are
good,
you?
good evening. So you have the monthly police report for March of 2025 for the calls for service and whatnot. The only thing I'd like to add, other than what was in here, is I did do night problems. Was a proctor for night problems at the police academy. Our recruit, Marcus Madrano, is doing excellent, and he's on track to graduate still on May 9th. So we're looking forward to that, which will bring us up to, of course, you know, full strength. What I did
He's been
include,
for 2 years, is that right?
4 years.
4 years?
Yes.
Wow.
And he's high in demand because I've got, he's got inquiries from other departments, but he's dedicated to us. So I also had done a grant request for the purchase of a ballistic shield, which was approved, which went towards the purchase of a ballistic shield for the patrol officers. $2,700. So that was,
Who's the grant?
that is through the 100 Club,
Yeah.
the 100 Club of Lansing.
All right, excellent,
Yes.
great, fantastic. It's nicer out, are you getting busier?
I'm sorry.
You wanna talk about the excitement today?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
the-
yeah, what was all the sirens?
So
I mean, I
that
didn't
was-
go on Facebook to, follow
That
what
was
was
a-
all the sirens, but
That was a trifecta that happened all within 20 minutes.
can't wait to hear it.
So, we did receive a call that, a young man saw what he thought was a person jumping over a bridge into the water. It was put out for, Deer Creek,
Mhm.
but we found out after I talked to the young man, he actually meant the bridge, Putnam Street Bridge. It was actually a fisherman, jumping over the fence to retrieve his lure from the tree that he got hung up. So he did see someone jumping over the fence, just not into the water.
Okay,
So,
Alright.
but it elicited a healthy response from NISA
yeah,
with their boat, and we had all the resources there, just in case of.
did he get his fishing lure back?
Yeah, he
That's
did.
the important thing.
He
Throw
did.
him in his tackle bags, resting
Yeah.
comfortably.
Sure,
Yes.
sure.
So, and at the very same time that went out, a large brush fire in Weberville went out, Gramer, and just south of Weberville somewhere.
Sure.
And then at the same time, a personal injury accident at M52 in Highview in Weberville. So you had 3 things, actually 4 things. There's a medical call up in Shoesmith.
Okay,
So a lot of activity in a short time.
all right, well, but you guys handled it
Well, we certainly did.
flawlessly, I'm sure. Yeah,
Got the lure?
I know, I would like to.
And he
see
got
what
the lure.
What lure it was, that it was so important that you had to jump over a fence.
I don't know, but he got it. He was muddy, but he got it.
All right, well, good, I'm glad everybody was okay,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything serious, but
Was
great
he
to.
embarrassed?
A little bit. When the fire department showed up with their boat and everything. Yeah.
But excellent response time.
It was. We carried throw bags.
Can you imagine jumping over the other way when the fire department showed up?
Yeah. We carried throw bags in the back of patrol cars to throw to victims in the water. So the 2 patrol officers who showed up had their bags ready, and
He's got a great fish story now.
he does.
All right, excellent, well, thanks, chief, appreciate
Yes,
it.
Thank you.
In our packet, we do have our report from Livingston County Department of Building and Safety Engineers. They handle all of our permit issues for residential and commercial. If you have any questions regarding anything that you see on this report, please do not hesitate to reach out to our city manager, and he will get those questions answered for you. Tom, you've got your report in here, would you like to elaborate on it?
It's, I guess, nothing special in that particular report, just the monthly financials that we try to provide you for your review. Of course, a lot of the information is similar to what's in the budget, that, because with the budget, we always also give where we're at current year to date.
Sure.
But no, everything's going well.
Good.
Funds are doing well, everything's moving along good. The only thing I'd like to kind of maybe just reiterate, just as Councilmember Hannafin said, definitely if you have questions on the budget or would like, a copy or whatever, more than happy to provide it, so don't hesitate to reach out on that, so.
And we've got about 2.5 months left in this fiscal year. Everything's trending the way it should be, no big surprises.
Nope,
So,
everything's looking good.
all right, excellent, thank you so much. I'll go around the table. Does anybody have any subcommittee reports?
Yeah, NISA.
Terry, NISA.
Interesting. NISA has this thing, and I said publicly at the NISA thing that I think it's tricky or sneaky the way they do this. We have action items that we're gonna vote on, then we have discussion items we're not gonna vote on. We're gonna discuss them, and there's not gonna be any money spent or decisions made because they're just discussion items, they're not action items. Well, NISA flips them around. They have discussion items first, and it's not uncommon. Actually, I've only been to 3 meetings, and every one of them, they've had one of these, where the discussion item, they say, oh, good, we're gonna make a motion to move the discussion item to the action item so we can spend a bunch of money, which the last time around was $250,000. And I think that's sneaky. So I said so at the meeting, and they had this thing with, was it Chase car or something like that, so a mere $55,000. And I said that I didn't think it was a good idea. And the vote was the other way around. Instead of being 4 versus 3 in favor of moving the discussion item to the action item, the vote was 5 against 2 to not move it. So they didn't move it. They didn't spend the money. And there was a discussion about how we're gonna do our agendas at NISA. And I don't know for sure that's gonna happen, but most of the townships that are involved, there's 4 townships, Weberville and Williamston, that are involved, so 6 government organizations, so all of them have meetings and stuff like that, all of them have agendas. We're the only ones, no, maybe there's 2 of them, that do action items and discussion items. Most of them do old business, new business, which is a straightforward way to do it. So I think that NISA is gonna move to the old business, new business thing.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's a step forward.
Sure.
So do you think that they were intentionally putting things as discussion, knowing that they were gonna turn them into action just to be deceptive? Or was it just happened to be that way?
The fact that it happened so regularly, I don't want to accuse them of being deceptive, but I will say that it appears to be sneaky.
Okay.
Okay, that's the term that I used, is sneaky.
Okay.
Well,
And I think
That
that's,
surprises me, actually.
keep being the strong
Not you.
voice, Terry.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
And
I've been
these
saying.
guys, these guys, they are swimming.
I'm slow.
Yeah, they are
Well-
swimming in money.
Thank you for being diligent to make sure that their meetings run smoothly. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
And the good news is that we will not need to buy a new fire truck for about 10 years.
Good, excellent.
That's good, because those things are,
Expensive,
they're
yeah.
a lot of them.
All right. Anyone else have any meetings that they've gone to that they'd like to share?
Like I
Tim?
said, the planning commission was very exciting.
Yes?
It was very enjoyable. A lot
Okay.
of beautiful opinions from the public
Okay,
over there from the 2 neighborhoods.
sure.
It was the longest planning commission meeting in history.
So you had a couple site reviews. Can you tell us in general proximity what sites were on your agenda?
Well, we were doing the project over on, oh God, why am I drawing a blank?
Raleigh?
Yeah, Raleigh Road, yeah, between Red Cedar and Fox Run,
Mhm.
that development there, and they showed up in big numbers to talk against that. They weren't too happy about it. A lot of the things that they had out there for why they didn't want it to be was shallow at best. But they were really concerned about it being rentals.
Mhm.
But it's a beautiful layout, it's a beautiful place. I mean, it looks like they covered all their bases. And I think at the end of the meeting, with the way the planning commission voted, it just hopefully put the rest of a lot of things. And, so, yeah, it was
Was it unanimous?
what's that?
The vote unanimous?
Yes, it was,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, it
Alright.
was.
To approve the site plan.
To approve the site plan, it was approved.
All right. Yes?
Just,
John?
just to clarify, there was a special land use that was granted, and then the preliminary site plan was granted with about 21 site conditions and 3 or 4 engineering conditions.
Okay.
So it's not final, but it was, the preliminary was approved.
Still moving forward,
Correct.
forward progress. All right, great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Could you give a summary on what happened with the, what is it?
Tailgaters?
Yes, tailgaters.
I think Tailgaters
Were they
is
up?
moving
Were
forward.
they up?
Yeah, Tailgaters is moving forward, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, Tailgaters is moving forward. They do have some things that they have to change.
Do they want us to pay $500,000 to do the brown field stuff?
So,
That's a big one.
just
Yeah.
briefly, but not to get too far off topic, their final was approved with some contingencies that are, a few engineering and a few site that were, I think pretty easy for them to overcome. The brownfield information will be forthcoming to council, presentation on the 28th
Okay.
of April.
Excellent. All right. Anyone else for committee, subcommittee? All right, moving along. I don't see that anybody has joined our audience, so I'll skip over that. I'll go to council member comments. I'll start with Tim down here on the end. All right, Scott?
I'm good.
All right, Dan?
Nothing this evening.
Steve?
Good.
Terry?
Thorough staff work, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I love the fact that we're meeting earlier now because that means we get to get out and enjoy the abundant sunshine, even though the temperatures are gonna shift a little bit colder tomorrow. I appreciate everybody's work on your committees and bringing back information to council. It's not easy sometimes when you, whether it's council or planning commission, and you have a full gallery and you have residents for and against. And so I commend you, Tim, being on planning commission, because sometimes that's not an easy seat to set in. But you guys are by the book, you follow the letter of the zoning code and the law. So I appreciate the work that we're doing right now with the potential of what's coming into Williamston, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial, so.
It's looking good.
So thank you, and please extend my thanks to the rest of Planning Commission. But again, thank you for the work that you do, Terry. Make sure you stay on NISA, you know, hold them to what needs to be done ethically and properly. I appreciate it. I know, right? But I think with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 6:50. Thank you so much.
So what was it?